Before I start my presentation, I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge and honor the wonderful work that you are doing at N4, at Career Transitions, at Pegasus. I think it's such important work, and as you will see in my presentation, it's work that really contributes to the mitigation of trauma effects and to the building of resilience. So I'm very, very excited to see the things that are happening and to see how many of you really care about newcomers, about immigrants, about people who have come here. So the presentation is about trauma-informed resilience, and why I use these words is because we keep talking about trauma-informed practices, and as you saw, doctors and nurses are asked to go through the code of ethics and to learn all these rules. And I really think it's a very big problem to have a system that in a way contributes to re-traumatization of people. So this is something that I will address today, because resilience is a trait that comes from our individual psychology, right? The way our embodied system responds to adversity, but it's also a function of the environment in which we are. So the social support that we have, a system that responds to our needs, and we need to have both, as you will see. And I wanted to start with this quote from Nelson Mandela: "Do not judge me by my success, judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again." And I think this speaks to many of the refugees who are here in this country, and I want to acknowledge the difficulties that they had to go through to arrive here. And also the many times they have tried to be successful here, and how that worked or not. I'm going to. I will start with a definition of trauma, because I think that a lot of us tend to think of just one type of definition that is very common. So the most general definition is that trauma is an injury that results from experiences that overwhelm our emotional coping system. So in this case, trauma is not about physical trauma, it's about psychological trauma. And what it creates is that it leads to long-term protection mechanisms. So our psychology changes as a result of adversity, and our relationship to the world changes. Another definition is that trauma is an experience or a series of experiences that break or betray our inherent needs for safety, belonging, and dignity. So this is a definition that refers to the human basic needs. We speak of human rights, but there is also something called human basic needs that needs to be acknowledged. So the most familiar definition of trauma is what some researchers call the big T trauma, which are traumas that come from natural disasters, accidents, violence, war. These are very powerful effects on the psychological, emotional system. But then we also have the small T traumas, the ones that we don't see and we don't talk much about in our society, because these traumas come from discrimination, poverty, lack of basic needs, toxic prolonged stress. And I will mention that having to go through so many obstacles for IEHPs is contributing to this toxic prolonged stress that has an effect on their well-being and sometimes even on their mental health. The experience of displacement as well. The first definition of trauma was with the medical term of PTSD in 1980s. And since then, there is this explosion of research that is being done about how adversity is changing who we are in the world, and how to move through that, and how to recover our wholeness after we lose some parts of us because of different experiences of trauma. So it affects our immune system and our worldview as well. There are these 6 different types of trauma primary trauma is when we experience a very difficult and traumatic event ourselves. Secondary trauma, and this is something that is being studied more and more in relation to healthcare workers, both secondary and vicarious trauma. Secondary trauma is when we witness somebody going through an experience of violence, and we can also be traumatized ourselves, which shows that we are interconnected. We are affected by the suffering of other people as well, not only by our own suffering. Vicarious trauma is when we treat or talk to people who have gone through trauma. Intergenerational, when it's transmitted from parents to children. Collective is about a certain ethnic group or a certain nation that has gone through an experience of war or displacement. And moral injury is the trauma that comes when we cannot do what is humanly needed in a situation because of regulations, because of a system that forbids us to do what we feel deeply is the right thing to do. And I think a lot of people in our system suffer from moral injury. So as you see, it's about, if you look at that picture, you can think of that metaphor or image of trauma as an experience of breaking, right? It's something that happens in our psychological system when we start losing certain aspects of who we are, and we become separated from ourselves and separated from other people. And this separation starts contributing to long-term effects to our way of being in the world. We may become cynical, we may become burnout, we may become depressed, or many other manifestations that you will see. It also leads to distortion of our worldview. What happens with traumatic events is that sometimes we remain stuck in the past. It's very difficult to recover and be fully present in the present moment because a part of us is still somewhere else. And what I would like, what I'm hoping that you will take out from this presentation today is this idea that less catastrophic events like that toxic prolonged stress can lead to traumatic effects. And that means that both we as individuals have the responsibility to take care of ourselves in the best way, and the system has a responsibility towards people so that they can work and be present to their work in a way that that is helpful. And I won't mention, you're probably familiar with the trauma symptoms. They appear at all levels: physical, behavioral, interpersonal, cognitive, emotional, and spiritual. And one aspect that we noticed in our program with the IEHPs, as you know, at St. Paul University, Sahar and Andrew mentioned the program of integration for IEHPs that we have. And in our research that we do now with doctors, a lot of them lose their self-confidence in the process, right? Because they hit so many walls and they get so many refusals that, thank you, that it requires them to go through a process to recover their trust in themselves, to recover the hope and confidence that they are able to do the things that they are skilled and trained for. I also wanted to mention, because especially for people who have gone through a refugee experience, the experience of displacement itself, that very quick rupture from one space to another space, is also traumatic, because as people, we are not separated from our environment. So as individuals, we belong to a family or an intimate network. We belong to a community, an institution, and a landscape of our country that sometimes we have to run from very quickly without having time for. So there is a very big difference between people who make the decision to immigrate and they think about it, they plan, they do the right action. So there is that transition, whereas for refugees, you don't have that transition. It's a very sudden removal from this space that leads to a trauma effect. And I wanted to mention the needs of safety, belonging, and dignity, because they are really essential for IEHPs. The fact that the work that you do in your organizations, those of you who presented this morning and who will present after me, you contribute to a sense of safety, belonging, and dignity for people who arrive here, who can be re-traumatized by the lack of these basic needs. If you don't have a job, you're not safe, right? Because you don't have the financial means to look after your family. If you don't have a job, you don't belong, because you are still an outsider to everything that is happening. And if you don't have a job in this day and age, it's very difficult to have a sense of dignity, especially for IEHPs, for whom their profession, it's not just a profession, it's part of their deep identity. They have invested so much of themselves in becoming doctors and nurses. It's a vocation, right? It's not only a job. So it's so important to address this. And I wanted to move on to the definition of resilience, that resilience is our capacity to overcome life challenges and obstacles. And sometimes we may overcome them, but what have we lost in the process? Sometimes we lose our well-being, we lose family, we lose friends, we lose our trust in life, right? So there are many things that can be lost. And it's, I wanted to talk about the three different aspects of resilience, because resilience, it's not only remaining the same as we go about, as we go through adversity, but also being able to change something, to shift a little bit, to adapt and grow. And sometimes that shift or adaptation can be quite difficult, and it needs more support. So the three ways in which we can build resilience is, first of all, through the way we take care of ourselves. And it's very common that caregivers don't take good enough care of themselves, right? It's attention directed towards people that you serve. Community support, a sense of belonging and inclusion. So the role of community is really important. That's why the work that you do in these organizations to build community through programs, through one-on-one work and bringing people together is really important, because when people arrive here, they don't have a network. They don't have, like you said, people who give them good reference, because they don't have that long-term relationship. And the last one is building more capacity in the environment to support individuals. And this is where we hope that policymakers will hear these presentations, because it's not only about asking refugees and immigrants to adapt to the Canadian system. The Canadian system needs to adapt as well in order to meet these people in a positive way and not discard them and not force them to move to other countries. So this is really important. And I think that some of you are already doing this. Caring for yourself, which is a way to honor your life. And sometimes it's difficult to care for yourself when you're so busy and so stressed and thinking about how you can pass an exam or secure a job. But building in your daily schedule moments when you can reconnect to your body, when you can reconnect to your emotions is really important. So taking walks in nature, doing sports, creating these oases of calm in the middle of stress is a way to nurture yourselves. And that keeps you going, right? Because it is about maintaining your good energy as you move through these difficult situations. Self-compassion. So you can build more self-compassion by journaling, for example, and journaling about your struggles, or talking to an intimate friend about your struggle, expressing your needs or emotions, doing therapy when it's needed. And I think that therapy is also a really important aspect that a lot of people who arrive here come from cultures where therapy is not something that we normally do. So paying attention to the need for doing that as a way, again, to honor our lives and taking care of ourselves. one of the things that people mentioned in the integrating IEHPs program that we do is the importance of self-reflection and self-compassion. So understanding your life journey and having spaces where you can share that is really important. Building kind and caring relationship and engaging in appreciative inquiry and gratitude. So noticing the things that are happening that are positive and the work that others are doing for you in the midst of all these obstacles and difficulties. And we also need resilience that the system must create for people. So the work that you're doing, as I said, a navigation, providing easy access to resources. A lot of people don't know where to get the right information. And sometimes it's contradictory information depending on the website that you read. And this is very damaging. Having a system that provides trusted and easy access to resources is important. Building resources like education, language, healing, and cultural training, and offering more meaning, because meaning emerges through secure attachment with other people. It's amazing how much of a difference it makes to know that somebody cares, that somebody actually wants to do things well and listens to the issues that refugees and other people who arrive here are experiencing. So all these build secure attachment with others, self-esteem, more agency. And the doctors and nurses in our program talked about the way the program helped them recover a sense of hope and agency, right? Thinking that they are not alone in looking for jobs. And I really appreciate the work that you have done at N4 with the reports that you created, because a missing part of me is so aptly titled, a missing part of me is reflecting the experience of trauma that IEHPs go through when they cannot enter their profession, right? Because they have to abandon that part of themselves, which is very, very difficult, and it can be traumatic. So you know already about I won't go through the problems. Also knowing that there are many services for you and accessing these websites with various programs for mental health, for well-being, and for recovery from trauma is something that is helpful, like Wellness Together Canada, the Refugee Healthline. A lot of these services are free of charge. Community resources for immigrant and refugee youth, and the Canadian Center for Immigrant and Refugee Healthcare. So having access to free counseling or programs that build your resilience can be really helpful for you in this process. So thank you all very much for your attention.